Coming up, I'll be talking with Dr. Bruce Corrie about St. Paul's ethnic capital. That's next on the St. Paul Forum. Welcome to the St. Paul Forum. I'm Lisa Tabor, your guest host, alternating with John Forty while Mike Wassenaar is on sabbatical. With me today is Dr. Bruce Corrie, Dean of the College of Business and Organizational Leadership at Concordia University. Welcome to the forum.
It's always a pleasure to be here with SPNN.
Thank you. So I said we were going to talk about ethnic capital. Can you tell us what that is?
It's about a decade now that I began focusing on what I would call the Alana communities, African, Latino, Asian, and Native American communities. And what I noticed in the past that the community used to focus on the media, the mainstream media, the popular perception on the deficits of the community. So you would focus on crime, you'd focus on welfare, but no one would talk so much on the assets, what these communities bring to the table. And that's what I mean by ethnic capital. And ethnic capital would include these dimensions of their community, these communities as consumers, say having a buying power greater than the GDP of maybe over 50 countries in the world, having as entrepreneurs that their businesses are growing very rapidly, even much more rapidly than the mainstream businesses nationally and locally. Ethnic workers, that we not only have them, say, as the essential workers, the roofers, but we also have them as high-skilled doctors and lawyers and educators and so on. And then we have the community involved as in global trade networks, connecting different parts of the world. For instance, we recently launched the India Chamber of Commerce with the idea of connecting businesses and people between India and Minnesota, and India is a huge growing market. Then we have cultural capital, the food, the cuisine, the dance, the music, how they kind of create a colorful and spectrum of the entertainment and culture of the place. Then political capital. You saw the races that happened recently where candidates won by a few hundred votes, and here these communities can play a pivotal role. But also as the frontline workers and volunteers. I've come across people who volunteer countless hours on different campaigns and part of the system. And then as civic capital, as political capital, cultural capital, entrepreneurial capital, fiscal capital. Very often people say that these communities cost a lot of money, but you'll find that there is again contributions to the tax base of the state. In fact, if you look at projections of the communities between now and 2030, the fastest growing segment of that tax base are Asian, Latinos, African American. These are groups that are going to be a pivotal part of the tax base. So we've got to look at the communities as ethnic capital, and this capital gives you an idea of capital creates wealth, creates value, creates abundance. And it's not something that's academic. We can see it on the streets around us. I know somebody, for instance, the latest Twin Cities Business magazine, they listed 200 Minnesotans you should know. And I found 3 Asian Indians in that list. And one person, Mahendranath, at one time owned about 160 Burger Kings around the country. Wow. Another is a senior executive in Best Buy. Another one is an entrepreneur that's created a lot of interesting learning companies, and right now is focusing on stepping back from the company and setting up some educational institutions in India to help bring up the country too. So you find, I'm talking one community, you've heard about Eugene Sitt, you've heard about who started the Military Appreciation Fund, and Leanne Chin, who died recently, and then in the Latino communities, you find Representative Mariani doing a lot for education. In the African American community, Thor Construction, and Alfred Babington Johnson, who has that manufacturing facility, CIAZA. You have Penumbra Theater, nationally known. Native American communities, you see not only the attention to the casinos and how they have spurred economic development in formerly areas of high unemployment rates, but you've also seen their influence on culture, like Black Bear Crossing and St. Paul, where they try to encourage the arts too. So when you look at this vision of ethnic capital, you find a lot of positive development is occurring not only in St. Paul but across Minnesota, and so that's what I try to document, try to produce data. And this data, what I do is not very sophisticated analysis. Most people can do it, and that's what I want to make a point, that they are accessible, and these are basic. Taking census data is available to the public, and from that census data, compiling where people are as workers or as entrepreneurs, and they are found on my website, ethniccapital.com, where people can access this information.
That's great. How did you get into this whole realm of collecting and communicating information about the value of ethnic capital?
I'm an economist by training, and so in economics you naturally gravitate towards numbers, and you look at it. And about many years ago, I began involved with Rick Aguilar's multicultural marketing seminar. About 10, he's been doing it for a long time, and he used to invite me to come and present data on the markets. And so I've been doing that, and then Governor Ventura appointed me to chair the Working Group of Minority Business Development, and it was this concept of ethnic capital that we wanted to promote. And I talked to him about the importance of documenting and illustrating the potential of entrepreneurs. So I was on a sabbatical, and he appointed me to chair this statewide working group, and a team of us with people like Mike Tamale and Ezel Jones and Maria Silver, Rich Antel. And with a statewide network of hearing, we produced a report that documented the role of entrepreneurs and what the state can do to nurture these businesses. And then when the immigration controversy arose, again, a very similar kind of pattern was emerging of focusing on one group of people, these workers, undocumented workers that came from Mexico, and pointed to them as a burden to the state. And I happened to do some research, and I found there was a database that the immigration maintained of all the companies that were fined for hiring these workers. So I said, I'd like to find out who are these companies, where they're located. And I was surprised to find that over 1,000 companies all across Minnesota, big, small, including some universities and some government agencies, hired these workers. So I was thinking about it and said, if these workers are so important that so many different groups were to hire them, then why are we beating them up instead of thinking about good policy, temporary visas or whatever that could address that issue? And so I started exploring some more details about that community, and produced a report on my website on Liberians. And again, it's a community that every year we talk about extending their status. Liberians have a very close connection to the U.S., parallel to the history of slavery. And so the connections are not just another country, it's kind of, there are some deeper roots. So these people, Liberians, have come to Minnesota. So I tried to explore what's the impact of those Liberians on the local economy. A small population, so I did an economic simulation that what would happen if say 4,000 Liberian workers who work in the healthcare sector were suddenly to disappear. And I found that would have a massive impact. It would be like a shock on the healthcare system, because they're employed as healthcare workers, home healthcare aides, nursing homes would suddenly be faced with a vacuum. And so it would have hundreds of millions of dollars impact on the economy. Wow. The same way if about 3,000 meatpacking workers of Mexican origin was to suddenly leave the state, a similar impact, about $400 million on the state. And so another study that we did was on African immigrants nationally and locally to find out what their impact was. And again, we found some very strong connections as consumers, and that's what we were trying to document it. Mm-hmm. So when you paint this picture, what I'm offering Minnesota is a new way of looking. It's the power of an idea. Mm-hmm. You can take an idea that pulls you down, or you take an idea that makes you explode. Mm-hmm. And we've been caught up in this old idea of, oh, this is bad, this is thing, and it's limiting us. But if you explore that idea of the possibility, you can have one person, just one person among that group that can make a dramatic change. Just think about it. The Kenyans, immigrants from Kenya, it's just a very tiny percentage of all immigrants and also African immigrants in this country. Yet from that community, we have the President of the United States. One person. Mm-hmm. So how do you look at, when we look at this community, do we look at them as the future President of the United States can be the future revolutionary technology? As you can see in the news, I saw the other day an immigrant with a technology, which amazed me. He had a little box in his hand, and he said, this is how he's going to, the whole energy of that house can be stored in this little box. And Google and all these people are buying his energy. It's kind of like about this size, where the energy, an alternative way of consuming energy. So you can think about the revolutionary ways that we can transform, we can make Minnesota globally competitive if we just break the trap of our preconceived notions about who people are and turn to more to what people can become. Sure. If you create environments of freedom and openness.
You are our local guru, I think, on especially on ethnic capital and working with organizations to help better quantify the potential that exists in our local business, our ethnic-based business groups. And all these surveys and reports that you've produced, what has come of them? I mean, what changes are we likely to see as a result of more people, especially hopefully decision makers in power, are considering this information?
The impact, I think, has been at different levels, from people writing a grant proposal for a particular project and who download some information from the data, ask me for information. People, during the national election, I once got a call from somewhere in the South. An African immigrant group found my website and wanted to know, do you have information of African immigrants in this place, because they were hosting a major political rally. You have Governor Polendi, when he had his inaugural, when he won the election first, I met him and I said, I didn't really know him before that. So I met him at an event and said, I'd like to take you and show you these communities and the economic potential. So on his inaugural day, I took him around the different communities and we met with him. But coming out of it, he said, I'd like you to write a concept paper on India, a trade mission to India. And so with the group of people, we did a proposal of a trade mission to India, and later he went after in his second term. But people like that begin to see the power of, they're seeing the power of the communities, and so there are people in government officials, or there are people I've invited many times to speak about ethnic capital, because they want people to hear a different perspective. They want to see people to see this vision. Mm-hmm. So I've seen that kind of reaction of it. percolating out, but statewide, in a very prominent way, I have not seen that happen. And I think that needs to happen if we are to break if we are really wanting to break from the pack and be very successful. Because I've been lately, a couple of times, I've been on a same panel with the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and they talk about businesses coming to invest, for instance, in the Iron Range, alternative energy, meat in food processing industries, and they're beginning to see how global connections can make a difference. So ethnic capital, global capital, it's a reality that you can have those connections.
Great. If you're just joining us, I'm talking with Dr. Bruce Corrie, Dean of Concordia College's College of Business and Organizational Leadership. Dr. Corrie, you were talking a little bit about how one person can make a difference with a vision, and I'd like to now talk about your vision and the difference that you're making here in St. Paul with a project called the World Cultural Heritage District. Could you give us some background on that?
I wouldn't claim the mantle of that vision. I think a number of folks have been working on this idea for a few years. People like Brian McMahon and Art Weddington and Ada Presley and now Paul Hart, and you yourself have been connected with that vision of the African American Cultural Heritage District, which is I think some pioneering work there, and Nihon of the Asian American Press. So a number of people have been. We were looking at the developments around light rail, and we didn't want to see what happened to the old Rondo neighborhood. I had a friend, Marguerite Wilson, who died when she was 102, and she would tell me about how she had to uproot from her home. She lost her home, and she had to go and she moved more closer to St. Peter Claver Church. And so we said, is there some way that we can make sure that the train does not pass by, but the benefits of it improve? And again, we go back and we look that actually it's a place of potential, because again, you have ethnic capital in this area around University Avenue, from Lexington Parkway to the Capitol, from Selby to Minnehaha. You have ethnic art, theater, music, businesses, everything is there. If we could show people this vision that as the light rail comes through the different cultural journeys from through Central Corridor, from the arts and the big box development, they'd come to this vision where you'd have the world in your neighborhood. That's what we talked about. And it's when we look at, there's a potential of cultural heritage tourism. There are a lot of people who travel for cultural heritage, and we can capitalize on it by having in this place a nodal point where people can see and connect to, whether it's the Swedish Institute or the Penumbra Theater or the Children's Theater, a place where we can celebrate it, a destination point, and where people can invest and build up the community at the same time. And so we got this idea, resolution passed and approved by many of the communities.
And it's even a part of the Central Corridor
plan.
Yeah,
Mayor Coleman's leadership from his office and Nancy Holman's. We have it as part of the plan, and now the time to take it to the next step and implement it. And so with the help from the FRAN, the Neighborhood Collaborative in the Frogtown area, and with the Central Funders Collaborative and other groups, we are taking it next step. Our next step is to develop a logo, a branding of it, so that people can start seeing the potential. While talking to someone in the last meeting, we were talking about how the kind of an image of concrete being dug up during the Central Corridor, and then we were saying, now just think about the other image that we could portray, the beautiful image, the vitality, the vibrancy of cultural music and dance that people could see have a positive, even as the construction goes on. And so there are a lot of people who like the idea and are building this idea, and we want to start taking it to the next level, and I see a lot of potential for that.
And the impact has actually been broader than just the neighborhood, because you've now, I think, seen influences at the state level and on the River Center Convention Visitors Authority and some other groups that are kind of picking up on this idea. Can you elaborate a little bit more? How does that happen, and what does that mean?
Yeah, I some time ago did some research, and we looked at various success stories of cities like Philadelphia and Phoenix and Las Vegas and other places that looked at the revenue from ethnic tourism, and there's a lot of money there. For instance, if you bring the NAACP in conference or La Raza or the MBA, Black MBA to town for a national convention, many of these groups, we don't have the hotel rooms to cater to them. But a lot of those groups, if they want to come to a particular place, the first question they ask is, where's the action? And if there's not the action, they don't come. They go somewhere else. And there's a lot of these places, like I mentioned, Philadelphia, they've invested in this and they've made a lot of money out of it. So there is a potential for that. And in the capital, you mentioned there's a group of people, Hector Garcia and Senator Torres and David Zander and some other people have convened a meeting to look at the potential of this. And what we found out, I'll give you some ideas of the flavor of some of the people, what we're talking about. The India Chamber came up with this concept of a global village, where it's actually a free trade zone of where businesses from all over the world or organizations can locate in one place and interact, and Minnesota can interact, and the United States can interact in that place to facilitate commerce and relationship with people. So it's a big potential out there that I hope can begin to bear much fruit if there's some policy leverage and policy. See, for instance, we have that percentage of state money going to the arts, or a percentage of state money going to the what was that, environment, right? Even a portion of the arts money and portion of the environment money can still find its way in expressions and even in this concept. For instance, in this area of World Cultural Heritage District, if we make a commitment to go green and have green, a green district too, can't we take advantage of some of the green money, alternative energy money, or if we have the arts development, can't we have some portion of the arts money put into cultural heritage art? So I think it's a mindset of changing people to understand that this is not a zero-sum game. Some people think that if this group gets it, the other group doesn't get it. What we are saying is that if you invest in this group is going to bring a lot of revenue that will lift the whole boat, because that's the nature of the game. Again, I was with the Minnesota Chamber, and they were asking, you need talent to locate in Minnesota. Now, why would someone come here at minus 60 degrees? You have to have something very attractive to them. But the other part is you're going to see, it's like whenever I go to a restaurant, I look for the Tabasco sauce. Now, if the restaurant doesn't have Tabasco sauce, I'm out of there.
You're out of there.
So I'm looking for, I don't know how I can live without my
a little spice in life,
that jar pickle. I need that jar pickle. If they don't have it out here in Minnesota, I'm out of Chicago. I just came back from Toronto, and I saw, whoa, that's what multiculturalism can do there. You can get everything out there in a very vibrant society. And we can do that here. And we can do it without denying, but rather celebrating other cultures that have been here forever. For instance, we can celebrate the Scandinavians, the Norwegians, the Swedes, the Irish. All of them can have a home in this district.
Because they're part of the world.
Yeah, they're part of the world. And so it's an all-inclusive vision. It's a win-win vision, and I hope people could start seeing it, because the world is getting very competitive now, and we are competing with the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and we got to always be one step of the game. People in those countries are more American than we are. They can probably rattle off all our stuff and who won the election, who
all
won,
the celebrities.
but we cannot do what they about their countries. So why don't we be as smart as them so that we can have that kind of connections with them? So that's the potential and the power of an idea.
So I've got 2 minutes left. Tell us what we can see besides the logo, the new logo for the World Cultural Heritage District. What might we be seeing in the next year or two?
I think what we might see is we want to launch a lunch program to illustrate, get people to enjoy. People are coming anyway, but we want to see how we can drive more business to it as some kind of pilot models like that. We want to see how we can support individual businesses during the transition by maybe adopting a business and bringing people to that business location. We want to see if we can, some people might actually, because we create this environment, if we build it, they will come, kind of thing, that maybe some multi-ethnic themed businesses or entertainment would locate and there have been concepts already being floated around of people anyway wanting to do it. Like I've heard there was somebody who was thinking about an Arab village at some point in time at the corner of Snelling. So I don't think it's an unrealistic opportunity that people might actually find it's a worthwhile investment to locate here.
So if people, there are folks out there who are interested in setting up shop in the World Cultural Heritage District or participating, how can they get involved?
Connect with NAITA, the easiest way on University Avenue, you'll find the Aurora St. Anthony Development Corporation. Knock that door and NAITA Presley will show up and tell you how to get connected. We need everybody's help. We need support of people to build a vision, and that might be a very visible place. The Greater Frogtown Community Development Corporation on Dale is another good landmark that people can come in and see how they can get connected.
And would you have more information about the World Cultural Heritage District itself on your website?
There's a link there that goes to the World Cultural Heritage District. Once we get our logo and stuff, we'll have our own page and that'll be easy to find. Yes.
And that website is Ethnic Capital?
ethniccapital.com.
Wonderful.
And you'll be able to connect.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your vision with us. I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us on the St. Paul Forum. See you next time.